Well, I kind of feel a little funny sitting here talking to myself, is virtually what it is, but I've spent some time today watching a case on TV, which since I fell and hurt my leg, I've spent a lot more time watching cases on TV, and I've seen some pretty deplorable acts that they make me ill. But for me, it's a little bit deeper because it also makes me reevaluate decisions I may have made in my life that actually could have been my life turned into something similar to some of these things because of the way I started. And I'm not really an open book, but those who know me know my parents both are gone, and that there were some bad things that happened in my life, and I grew up in foster care, and it's sometime I might get to that and get a little detailed, but to grow and come to be the person that I am means that I can't always face those demons, and I carried all that pain. But these cases make me pray more and talk to God more. And I've been watching like Chris Greger and Wade Wilson and Alexandria Eckersley, even the Samantha Wall with Michael Jackson Bolano's case. There's prayers that have gone up for each and every one. There was an execution that happened. His name was Tebron Honey. And what he was, it was deplorable. Again, these are deplorable things, save for one. I do believe with all my soul that Michael Jackson Bolanos was innocent. And I do believe that the ex has more information than what he's willing to give. And I'm just not going to jump into that rabbit hole because this is a different one that I'm on to right now. I've been watching this case in Tennessee. Sean Finnugan makes me, at first I was going to joke about it, makes me want to jump into that song about Finnegan Begin Again, but this is not a funny joke. And this actually brings me to think more deeply about God, which is really why I started watching cases at all or praying at all, because in each case where I can point fingers at the sins, I can look at the sinners and find a reason to want to pray for them, except this case. This was deplorable, like a nightmare in every way. And you have all our little kids dressing up and saying they want to be into bondage or take over me or whatever you want to say, dominate me. I've seen a kid I've watched grow up put that on his page recently, and it's despicable because he doesn't understand what he's asking for till you watch a case like this, till you see a dog collar with 3-inch spikes on it on the inside of the collar that's been used in ways that no human being ever should. It shouldn't even be used on animals. And one of the comments that came up when I was watching on the screen was, I can't believe that this has actually happened. And you want to know what gets me is this is only one case that has gotten media attention, and I can name 5 more. Maybe not as intensive in the SA and the R. Boxes and freezers that are being used for things that should not be used, and we're wondering why this world is falling apart all over the place. This stuff is being swept under the rug, and everybody's acting like it's such a surprise that they're seeing this on TV right now. They found a girl in the loft of a garage chained. They found another one in the upstairs in a house chained to the floor. In my own town, not that long ago, they found a woman kept in an apartment. There is a Sean Finnugan and Rebecca, whatever her last name is, in every single town, because Legion is widespread. Legion is everywhere. See, my heart goes to Christ, and I usually type the things I have to say on Facebook, and I know people read them, even though I don't get response. I know people read them. And this time, instead of trying to type what I was going to say, I decided to record it because this breaks my heart. Human beings matter. Jennifer Paxton's matter. Once upon a time, I didn't have a place to go. Once upon a time, I was one of those girls willing to do anything just to have a roof over my head. Do you know how close that could have brought me to facing a Sean? I can name a couple sleazeballs. My friends always joked I was a-hole magnet. It's been a standing joke. I don't date anymore. Even my ex-husband and I fell apart. But it's legion and it's everywhere. I believe in God. And I believe that God is looking down on this earth right now with as much pain in his heart as what I feel after watching some of these trials happen. When Christ dispelled legion from the pigs, or from the man, he allowed them to go into the pigs because they didn't want to go back to the abyss, and they have run rampant and they confuse everybody. Timothy says that there's going to be a great delusion in the land, that even the truth will be in people's faces and they will not see it. And you tell me how people going to school and identifying with farm animals or kitty cats is not that delusion. I've been here watching these things and building up and saying things and posting prayers and asking for unspoken things and asking for prayers for people who might not deserve it. But my heart hurts, and I can't believe more people are not as angry as I am right now, that nobody cares enough to try to really reach out and change it. We have drug problems in small towns with people, and homelessness. And I'll tell you, homelessness and drug addiction go hand in hand. And if you read in Proverbs, there comes a verse where, and I can't remember the exact place. I'm going to have to start writing these things down before I talk. But you come to a verse that says, "Let the brokenhearted drink away their despair." And I have wrestled with that since I was a kid because I hurt. I had lots of reason to hurt. We had no real answer for why my mom was taken. My dad and I never connected. Drugs played a part in my past. Sibling rivalry, jealousy, favoritism, and you can go back in favoritism in my family to my mom's family, my dad's family, both sides. You can find favoritism in certain ways. And they played that. I was not the favorite. I always knew I was a black sheep. I always told people blood is not thicker than water. Love is thicker. And it isn't blood that makes family, it's love. And I'm sure there are family members out there that maybe see some of the things that I say that feel a little offended, but they have to look at it a different way. When I was 14, I was homeless on the streets, coming up the way that Jennifer Paxton did. You know how thankful I am right now that I knew Christ before my mom died. I judge myself looking at this video today because I could have gone the wrong way out of desperation and no hope. And we get a lot of judgment out there for these girls that do these things. Like now we're getting into Alexandria Eckersley, who didn't even understand she was pregnant and gave birth in the woods in a tent that was made out of a tarp on a cold December night. Followed a guy who promised to take care of her because nobody else would. Homelessness is so bad. everywhere. There's encampments. There's even places in tiny towns like mine where you can find at least one person living in the trees year round. And I know that during our worst ice storms, I pray. Pray. That's our answer. That's what we get. We get prayer. We have power. Our power is our faith. That's what we were told to do, was put our faith in God. And as long as we put our faith and trust in him. And how many people get up every day and remember that verse in Psalms that says, pray every day and I'll put 10,000 angels over your head. And how many people think to pray for the ones that aren't praying so that 10,000 angels go over their heads too? Because like maybe there wouldn't be any Jennifer Paxtons out there. Maybe. My heart breaks. I know it's not new. What happened to her is not new. Will you go into Judges chapter 19? I do believe I was looking at. Now I'm in Samuel somehow, but hold on. Judges chapter 19, we start talking about a man who had many wives. Back then they had many wives. It was acceptable. It was more like Iran. Well, maybe more like Mormons, because it was polygamy. He was a Levite, and he had a concubine. One of his many concubines wasn't happy, and she went home to her dad. And this is exactly where I thought, Judges 19, and I'm just gonna tell you the story like I'm gonna tell a story. You can go read it. It goes from 19. Well, we'll keep going because it says that the Levite has a desire for revenge all the way in chapter 20. And she left. She went to her father's house and didn't want to return, and he went to go persuade her to come home. And the father didn't want them to leave. He wanted them to stay. He tried to talk them into staying, and they stayed for maybe a week. I didn't just refresh my memory of it before I started speaking. I just started speaking because usually by now I'm just typing, and quite frankly, Facebook and all the typing things get slow, and I spend hours just trying to say what I can just say. But the Levite stayed for like a week or something. They stayed extra days. And then finally he put his foot down. No, I need to get back to my home. I need to go. And he loads his wife up, they call her a wife. She was a concubine. The purpose of concubines was so that the men of the house could be sure to have a bloodline somewhere. I can't say that there was ever really love. It's definitely not a position a woman who has any desire to be anything would want to be in. But so anyway, to go on, she got on his donkey. She went home with him, and on the way, they go through a town that's kind of experiencing some of the similar afflictions Sodom and Gomorrah had. And they stopped to stay with an old man for the night. And somebody knocked on the door and demanding the same things, actually more than one somebody, but they knocked on the door demanding basically the same thing that was demanded of Lot. And the old man made the same offer that Lot did. Here, take my daughter. Here, take this concubine. And I don't need to express what happened or what was in the hearts of the people. They didn't even toss the daughter out. They just tossed the concubine out. And the next morning, the Bible describes that she crawled to the threshold. And that's as far as she made it to the door. And that the Levite took her home and did some of the very, very disturbing things that we see happen. Like, he mailed packages to different parts of Israel. It's a very disgusting story, and you wonder why. Why would a Christian need a story like that? Well, because good is not evil. And in watching trials, God's taught me something. A lot of the reason why we're absolutely horrified and shocked when things come out is because good people can't think bad. It's said in, Jesus says it. It depends on what kind of fruit your heart will bear. If you have a bad heart, you're going to bear bad fruit, and if you have a good heart, you're going to bear good fruit. And if you are bearing good fruit, you're not capable of polluting the food source, which in this case would be your thoughts, with the truly deep evil things. Now, there are sins, don't get me wrong. Men look at women every day, and women too, that claim that they're Christian and go, wow, something like that. Or there's always some kind of comment made. Like in this kitty, there was a discussion about the nose. And I don't know if you're following the case, but that was removed. And people made a joke about how if he went anywhere near their noses, they would delete him. And there was laughter, but how is that funny? How is that funny? I mean, maybe to some people, coming up with this kind of humor helps make it not so heavy. What bothers me is that we're more offended by what we might say that could describe it wrong. Like I have to remember to say delete here. But nobody wants to say, hey, there's a real problem and we need to start paying attention. You know what I heard a lot of being said in the beginning of this trial was, because it was not my business. And you know what? It hit me right between the eyes. Mind your business. Take care of yourself. Do what you're supposed to do for you. Don't worry about everybody else. Worry about yourself. She heard Sean's neighbor, all the bangs, and was just annoyed it would wake up her baby. And it's not that I'm pointing fingers at her, because this is a common story. Anybody would have just said the same thing that she said. But did anybody pay attention to the statement she made later where she said maybe if she had paid a little bit more attention to the comments she dismissed, the poundings on the wall would have made a little bit more sense and a need to call the police would have come up sooner? I've been saying this for years, with it ever since Sandy Hook, because most people realize I've dealt with situations where I worried about stuff like that. And it became apparent to me that a lot of the times what is going on is the red flags are just being ignored. And it doesn't matter if it's a mental health case or if it's a drug problem or if it's like what happened down there in Tennessee or with Wade Wilson's life. There were flags with Chris Greger even. They ignored them. There were 100 phone calls to DCPMP. It's the equivalent of Child Protective Services, with what we have here in Michigan. And they were ignored. And I have friends here that made phone calls that were ignored, and I've watched innocent people lose their kids for no reason, and I can't figure it out. And then I can understand why people turn to drugs to ease the pain, because I made that mistake once in my life myself, and I am not perfect, but I am better than what I once was. And I am anything, any day that makes me successful. It is a better version of myself than what I was yesterday, every day, continuously, for the rest of my life. And when you watch things like this, you want it to go away, and we spend our lives looking the other way and trying to pretend it doesn't exist, but it's real. And so I guess the reason I'm bringing this up is because I'm pointing out that we need to start praying for our country more. We need to start asking God to send angels over strangers that we may never meet and don't even know to ask for, but God knows. That's what unspoken means. We need to start paying attention to the little people that annoy us every day, that we think are telling us lies that really aren't, because when the truth come out, the lies shock us. And I'm not by far thinking that Rebecca is innocent in this. Rebecca was a Jennifer Paxton that got pushed too far and turned into a monster. But there's too much of this going on and people don't see it. I can't even begin to count how many cases I've watched with deplorable things that I don't even want to describe, that are heartbreaking, and I have cried. And I still cry. I've prayed for people who have died, people who are facing the death penalty. I sent letters out to people who may never deserve to know God and tried to tell them about Jesus. I did. I got one letter back from Paul Ferguson. Well, 2 letters. I haven't heard from him since. But I told him about Christ, because if there's a small chance that you can take somebody who carries a little bit of bad and turn them on the right path and they can change, even if they spend the rest of their life in prison, it's better for them to change than stay the same. And this idea that people can't change is fact, is a lie, because I'm here to tell you, yes, they can, because I very well could have gone down the bad path. But by God's grace, I am who I am today. So people can change, and people do change. But one of the requirements is love and faith and support. And we spend so much time judging each other. How many people have you called trash today and laughed about it? How many people told you something that might have been a little unbelievable and you have walked away from it? Because every little flag is a call for help. Every little flag really is. Even if they are lying, what they are searching for is somebody to give them something to make them feel like a valid person, like they have a right to speak, like they are equal, and like they matter too. So I'm sorry to sit and cry, but I'm really not, because I'm going to ask for prayer again, like I always do. I'm going to ask that you guys take an extra second today to ask God to send angels out to all the Jennifer Paxtons that don't even know what's going to hit them yet, so that maybe the angels can protect them before the bad takes them away. There was a story I heard. It was during Ted Bundy's time, and I do believe it's a true story, but I don't remember the names, and I can't exactly prove it, but I'm going to share the story anyway. They said he was sitting in Dearborn, Michigan, and there was a girl studying in the library by herself. And my mom is actually the one who told me this story. So she wore a cross around her neck and prayed and believed in Jesus. And they were not supposed to be out after dark alone. There was some buddy systems supposed to be going on, but somehow the time had gotten away and she stayed in the library studying, and it became after dark, and she was on the campus at the college over there. And she was walking by. She walked right by his car. And he let her go. And they had CCTV or some kind of camera system at the time. And so this is important to remember. So she walks by and she goes on. And the very next victim was the one from Dearborn. And I can't remember names, and I really don't want to try to go back and get to details. I'm not a true crime recounter. My interest is trying to pray. It really has been, because there's so much broken in the world. That's what we should be doing, is praying behind the scenes, not making fun about it, watching it like it's an interesting movie, which is, by the way, half the stuff I'm seeing is coming from half these movies. So thank you so much, Hollywood, for making this reality come. But to get back to the story, the next girl that he picked was the one that he deleted from Dearborn. And somewhere down the line, when they figured it out and they were doing interrogations, they come across the film, and they see her walk right by herself, and she matches a description of everything he wants to take, and they can't figure it out. Why'd he let her go? There was nobody there. Why did he let her go? And they asked him. He said, hey, this is amazing. He said that there were two angels. Or there were two men with her. Excuse me, let me finish that. I'm jumping ahead. He said that there were two people walking with her that he thought were jocks, football players. Bigger guys, a good reason to not go after a girl. But on the camera and in reality, she walked right by him alone. And this is proof to me that angels are real. That all these things that are starting to pop up everywhere that are so evil, because these children, like Sean and Rebecca, they're not children of God. It took me a long time to understand that not all people they're not planted here by God. Not all people are God's children. There are tares. There are people, it's just like the verse says that he went out and he planted a field and he tossed good seed and it came up and there were tares, which is a word for weeds in the corn. And the servants came to him and said, but we thought you planted good seeds, so why is there wheat? Why is there wheat mixed with weeds out here? And he said, my enemy must have slipped in and threw his own seed in. And that is kind of it was one of those little stories that was meant to be more. It was meant to be heavy. That means that there are people amongst this earth that were planted here by Satan. And that means, and then he tells us a story about the fallen angels. And we want to believe in UFOs and aliens and mermaids and all this stuff. Well, I can tell you giants are real because that's the Nephilim. And they're even mentioned in the Bible. But I will tell you, skinwalkers are not real. Ghosts are not real. Your family's soul is not trapped here walking on earth haunting you. God says in Job chapter 4, I do believe, I have to look it back up, but in Job, it says that when you die, you go to your grave and you return no more. And everywhere else, when you read, it says that you go to your grave and you go to sleep and you wait. And in Timothy, when it's spoken about the resurrection, or when we're going to go be raptured, it says he raptures the dead in Christ first. That means every person that has walked on the face of this earth that has believed in God will be raptured first, before even the ones that are left living. We don't haunt. We have angels that are masters of deception. And they fell. Not just Satan. Satan's revolution isn't the only fallen angels. You have to remember there were watchers that broke the law too, that made the Nephilim. And there are many other stories that we might not know because we're merely human and we are blind to what the spiritual world really is. But I'll tell you, angels aren't pretty little people with nice feathery wings. They are God's warriors. And they are meant to provoke fear. And if they're scary when they're holy, imagine what they are when they're fallen. They're just dark. They look scary. The difference is in the power. They have none. They have none. They have to steal your power to have power. And our power is our faith. So when we believe in the lies that they give us, they are able to take the faith that God gave us to have power and use it to destroy us. And we all fall and we end up with people like Chris Greger and Wade Wilson. And I can just keep listing. Chad Daybell. Want me to keep going? Because I really don't want to. I feel sick to my stomach thinking about how bad it's getting. It's important to pray. It's important to pray. And prayer works. And I really feel for Samantha Wall's family right now, because my mom's death is still undetermined, sudden death still pending. So if there's anybody that understands what it is to not have an answer, I was 14 when she died and I am 47 now. And I won't get answers until I go home. And I know it, and my heart is at peace with that, because vengeance is God's. It's not ours. And that's one of the hard parts about watching these trials, is watching all the bloodthirsty people without them realizing how bad it really hurts to see it, because I recognize that as just as evil because of what I've learned. A good heart wants to see good, and a bad heart wants to see bad. And I don't want to see bad. And these trials are all bad, and I've had to force myself to look at it because I've been pretty naive about people my whole life. That verse about don't cast your pearls to the pigs, I don't see pigs, I see people. How do you tell the difference? This was something I come up with about 7 years ago, before, maybe it's a little longer, because I think I've been clean for quite a while, but it was before I broke away from the bad things I was involved in. I had a thought. It was an epiphany. So how do you tell the difference between the pigs and the pearl, or the pigs and the people? Because that's all you see is people out there. That's all I ever saw. And then we get down to what Samuel, the book of Samuel, pointed out about David, is that God looks at each person's heart. He looks at each heart to see where the good and the evil is. So it's not even the judgments that we make of people in court that matter. It's the person's heart. There's a warning that there are people that will be in heaven that we will see on earth that we don't think belong there. Jeffrey Dahmer was baptized before he was killed. There are people that have done unspeakable things to children that God will give forgiveness to, because they go to him and they repent, and he lets them come to heaven. Because forgiveness is a gift that he gives everybody, if they ask. And it really is a gift, because it makes all the pain go away. And I've carried a lifetime of pain. And it wasn't until I could forgive that God started to make my eyes open, and I saw more. And I don't hang out with the same circle. How I got from where I was, always trying so hard to become accepted, to who I am now, where I'm at home alone all the time in my room, is unexplainable, because I do still desire friends, but I desire friends that are a different level than just the being around people that I always desired before. So everything changes when God changes you, and everything grows when you let it. If your heart is good, it will grow good. And there's not going to be as many good people left towards the end of the days. And that's something a lot of people argue. Oh, there's only going to be 144,000 people that go to heaven at the end of the rapture. That's not at all, when you read the verses, what it says. What I interpret it to be is that's how many people will be left alive. That's how many of the alive in Christ will be left, because we will be outnumbered. And I think that's coming, because it shows in the polls, in the votes that aren't going the way that most people assume they should go, because it's what we believe is common sense, because it comes from a good heart, that those are right? I mean, that's been the argument the whole time. Isn't good? Shouldn't every man want to follow what's good and not have things that are a little decrepit? And then we get into 2 Peter, where God says, my ways are not man's ways. My ways are not man's ways. Oh, let me tell you what, man's ways, when you watch court, it's all these lawyers. I just saw this comment. I can't stand defense lawyers. How can they defend somebody? And then I had to say, that's why people don't like lawyers, because they are able to set their morals aside for money. They are able to stick up for somebody who does despicable things for a paycheck. And still they walk away saying, well, just because I have to do it, it's my job. They might not believe in what they're doing when they're defending this person. Chandra Vander Ark's lawyer said, I take no joy in having to do this. It's my job. This is deplorable is a word that come out of Wade Wilson's lawyer's mouth. Christopher Greger's lawyer, well, his morals are a little shaky there. If you even read back and find out his history, what you learn about his background, you understand why he's defending people who can do bad things. Bartenders who sell alcoholics alcohol every day, knowing that they're giving them their worst. These are the sort of things that the Bible says don't do. These are the sort of things that man says we don't have a right to choose. We have to just do it. And now we've got so much political correct and everybody has to do this and you have to dress this way, you have to talk this way. We have to accept people doing things and saying things to our children that we were raised to believe shouldn't ever be given to children. The end that's to come is God's plan, and good is going to win, but it's not going to be the way we want. But we keep forgetting that these bad plans that are coming are God's plans. But until this stuff actually starts, we are accountable. We are accountable to pray for each other. It is the Great Commission, co-mission. That means everybody's job is to collect wheat as much as you can. As much as you can. So I'm going to do this video for the first time ever and ask for prayer for our country, because there's a lot of all these different instances of people. There's more execution, can you say that? Capital punishment cases coming. There's more eliminations happening. There are people right now that we don't even know about going through in this moment what we're angry that Jennifer Paxton had to face. In this moment, right now, that's happening. So take some time every day and pray. Because what it says in Psalms is that we have to ask every day. We have to pray every day and ask God for that army over our heads. And we have to be selfless. And remember those who don't yet know to pray because they don't know any better. Because they haven't really seen that God is real yet. They've scoffed off church because that's what they've been taught to do. But do I believe that Rebecca would have turned out the way that she had she known God? I knew God, and I could have been her, bouncing from home to home to home. I knew God, and I rejected God even at some point. I ran from him. There's no denying it. I was so angry at him, and I can't think of too many people that wouldn't be. And in the Bible, in Psalms chapter 4, it says, don't go to bed angry, to express your anger. So I would openly express my anger to God every day, and I tell you, the more I let it out, the more he let me see why. And it didn't happen overnight, and I had to grow. Our country needs to get back to basics. I think it's progressively gotten worse since we voted God out of the national anthem, or the motto, when I was just a kid. But Planned Parenthood was pushing agendas in little girls' mind back then, now weren't they? We're fighting Legion, and Legion is everywhere. And in order to have enough angels to tackle that kind of corruption. We have to ask for those angels, but just imagine how many God really has if he'll send 10,000 over each head that asks. If we started, even if there are 100 people that are willing to ask that, multiply 10,000 by 100, and that's how many angels God deploys. And how much could be changed with an angel that has holy power facing down a fallen angel, a tear, who's taken over and destroyed yet another sinner's life. I can't decide if Rebecca and Sean are lost in all this. I can be appalled by what they did. I can believe with all my heart that they deserve the death penalty. But the judgment in the end belongs to God. And who's going to go tell these two people about God before they have to face hell? Because even what they did is nothing compared to what God has down there in that pit. And this is the difference between a good heart and a bad heart, because all I've heard today was ill wishes towards these people. They deserve it. Oh yes, I'm appalled and disgusted and angry. They deserve it. But what does that make my heart be when I want them to get what they gave to somebody else? Isn't it better to ask for a change? Love one another as I have first loved you. And I have said it over and over and over in my Facebook posts. I've said it so many times over the last 6 years. That is a loaded verse. Christ didn't just love us. He died for us. He faced his Father to take all the punishment for every wrong we ever did for us. He came back to life, gave us the Spirit, and told us that even though we're just made from dirt, we're not divine like angels. We die. We have to reproduce to keep our race alive, and angels get to live forever. And even still, he said, you can sit on my throne with me. And those are powerful words. And maybe I can't preach from the Bible exact where it goes, but I can tell you that you can go find them, and they will be exact sounds. Our world needs God, but God promised in the last days we're not going to be able to bring it. He's not going to give us signs and wonders. He's not going to make us miraculous, magical behaviors, because people believe in the magics too much for the wrong reason. He said that we wouldn't have any signs. When we asked for him, he would not answer, because the whole Bible is filled with signs that we ignored. And our whole life is filled with flags that we walk away from. We get too nosy in the things that really aren't our place to be involved in. And we say, oh, I don't want to be involved, when we know it's something really bad. So just pray for our country on a whole. God bless you. Have a good night.